Have you ever looked around and thought the present day sucks? How much worse can it get in the future? Well, science fiction writers have been answering that for over 100 years. And each decade it seems there's some novel that catches the imagination of a generation with the promise that things could get much, much worse. And I want to find those books decade by decade. Who am I? I am the BookTube Goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. First, what is dystopian science fiction? Dystopian is a world that has gone wrong. Usually the absolute worst case scenario of society. Think government control, societal collapse, the consequences of technology gone mad. It is the polar opposite, literally, of utopian, which is a perfect society. A lot of times stories first show a society that seems utopian, that seems perfect, until you scratch beneath the surface and find a dystopian underbelly. So let's look at dystopian novels that have impacted our culture decade by decade, starting with the 1930s. Because most dystopian novels can be traced back to Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, published in 1932. It's kind of amazing how prescient Brave New World is, even though the dynamics between men and women are a little bit misogynistic. Is it fair to say that? Anyway, Brave New World is about a futuristic society where people are genetically engineered and conditioned to be happy and conformist, mostly by taking a drug called Soma. We eventually meet John, who was raised outside of nature and is considered the savage, who demands the right to be unhappy. Spoiler, it doesn't have a happy ending, but I think it still resonates with readers today. Moving on to the 1940s, you know the book I'm going to talk about next. I know you do, so let's say it together. 1984 by George Orwell, published in 1949. This was the era just after World War II, and totalitarian governments were looming high in everyone's thoughts. So, Orwell created a world ruled by a totalitarian government called the Party, which controls every aspect of its citizens' lives. This world is a bleak and oppressive place where privacy and individuality are non-existent, and thought crime is punishable by death. One of the key themes of 1984 is the power of language. In the world of 1984, the Party uses language to control people's thoughts and beliefs. The Party's use of newspeak, a language designed to limit free thought. And it's a chilling reminder of the dangers of language manipulation. In addition, the novel explores the theme of surveillance and the ways in which governments use it to control their citizens. Still, is it relevant today? You tell me. In the 1950s, the scare of censorship and banning books was a hot topic, and in came Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, published in 1953. The story takes place in a dystopian future where people are entertained by shallow television and have no desire to think critically or question the government. The main character is a firefighter whose job it is to burn books, but he begins to question his role in this society and ultimately goes on a journey of self-discovery. Fahrenheit 451 is a cautionary tale about the dangers of censorship, conformity and the importance of knowledge and critical thinking. It's a story that still resonates today as we grapple with issues such as book banning, censorship, and fake news. When we get to the 1960s, there's one dystopian book that I think stands above all the others, though I'm not sure if it's because of the book itself or the Stanley Kubrick movie adaptation, but yes, I am talking about A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, published in 1962. It's actually a pretty small book, but boy, if you are triggered by anything, stay away from this book, stay away from the movie. Set in a futuristic England, A Clockwork Orange tells the story of Alex, a young delinquent who indulges in the ultra-violent with his droogs. And that means gang. What Burgess does with language in this book, creating a whole slang culture, is worth reading just for that. Anyway, young Alex gets arrested and then becomes a pawn in a government experiment to eradicate free will. But is it justified to take away someone's free will if they are the most irredeemable person you can imagine? This book challenges you to think about the nature of free will, morality, redemption. If that interests you, you may want to give it a try. Unless you're triggered by, well, anything, then maybe stay away. The Clockwork Orange has all the triggers. Anyway, let's move on to the 1970s. I was actually having trouble deciding what dystopian novel of the 1970s really captured the zeitgeist of that time. I was thinking Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin, or The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, but I'm not sure that many people outside of science fiction readers would even know about those novels. Or maybe The Stand by Stephen King, which I think is one of his best works and was certainly read by a large number of people. Then I was like, wait a minute. There was a dystopian book published in 1971 that has captured the mind and hearts of generations of readers from a very, very, very early age. I'm talking about The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. Talk about a book that has probably done more for awareness of environmentalism than any other because it hooks you at such an early age. But what a great book. The Lorax is a guardian of the beautiful truffula trees that provide a home for many interesting creatures, and the man in the hat, the Onceler, begins chopping down the trees to make thneeds. What are thneeds? Well, we know he starts a factory and begins selling thneeds all over the world, so I think it's Amazon. Anyway, I dare you to think of a more influential and prescient book than The Lorax. Okay, in the 1980s, there's one book that is, without a doubt, the dystopian novel of that decade. That is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, published in 1985. The Handmaid's Tale takes place in a dystopian future where the United States has been eradicated by the Republic of Gilead, a totalitarian regime that enforces strict gender roles and religious fundamentalism. Offred is a handmaid who is a woman assigned to bear children for her male owner in a society where fertility rates have dropped dramatically. From gender roles and power dynamics to the dangers of religious extremism, this novel had a resurgence in 2017 when Hulu made an adaptation of the book, and for some reason it got the green light during Donald Trump's presidency. I wonder why. In the 1990s, there was a book published aimed at a younger audience, and I think it's YA or maybe it's middle grade, but it's been on reading lists ever since, and I am talking about The Giver by Lois Lowry, published in 1993. This is one of those novels that starts off in what seems like a utopian society. No pain, no suffering, no war, but there's also no love, no freedom, no individuality. And the story revolves around Jonas, a young boy who's chosen to be the receiver of memory, the only person in the community who's allowed to experience pain, emotions, and memories of the past. As Jonas starts receiving memories from the current receiver of memory, known as a giver, he starts realizing the dark secrets of his community and its flawed system. The novel explores several themes, including the importance of memory, the significance of individuality, and the consequences of sacrificing freedom for the sake of security. It challenges the reader to question their own values and the society they live in. In the 2000s, I think we can all agree that the dystopian novel that became a cultural phenomenon and went on to spawn a fantastic movie empire is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, published in 2009. Yes, it's another book that's not necessarily aimed for adults, but I still think it's a great read. The Hunger Games is set in a dystopian future where a powerful government known as the Capitol rules over 12 districts. Each year, one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 from each district are chosen to compete in the Hunger Games. Our hero, Katniss Everdeen, volunteers as tribute to spare her younger sister from the games, and with her fellow tribute, Peeta, she must fight for survival in a deadly arena. The Hunger Games is a story about standing up to tyranny and oppression. It's about the power of hope, love, and sacrifice, and it's a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's always a glimmer of light. In the 2010s, there's really two contenders as far as I'm concerned, but as much as I wanted to say Red Rising by Pierce Brown, I think if we're talking about cultural zeitgeist, the dystopian novel that really captured our attention was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, published in 2011. Now, since I came of age in the 80s, I can really appreciate that a lot of this novel was a love letter to 80s pop culture. The story takes place in a dystopian future where most of humanity spends their time inside a virtual reality world called the Oasis. The story follows Wade Watts, a young boy who is obsessed with the Oasis, and its creator, James Halliday. When Halliday dies, he leaves behind a challenge for the players of the Oasis, find a hidden Easter egg within the game, and inherit his entire fortune. As much as you can get lost in the fun of the story, it's also a cautionary tale about the dangers of escapism and the importance of living in the real world. So what about the 2020s? It's too early to tell what dystopian story could capture the zeitgeist of this era. My thought is that it's probably going to have something to do with artificial intelligence. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and let me know what your favorite dystopian book is. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.